Legally, they should have taken my statements, but they neglected to do so. So, I am now presenting my statement to the collective personality of the judiciary and for the information of the Interior Minister. By reason of your job and duty, you are obliged and compelled to hit a person who has caused no harm to this country and nation these last 40 years, indeed has been most beneficial for them. In short, during the 31st of March incident, with one speech this person induced 8 mutinying regiments to obey their officers, and he saved many of those officers, and with his pamphlet The 6 Steps in the midst of the national movements, he turned the ulama, Shaykhul Islam, and Istanbul away from supporting the foreign occupation forces and performed courageous services during the First World War that were praised and applauded by the late Enver Pasha, and whom 3 awesome commanders did not dare to touch, although they were angry with him, and before the truth which he had followed, 3 courts of law were confounded and did not have the courage to condemn him, although he could have been legally charged due to the calumnies of coward atheists, and whose treatises have been praised and commended by scholars of religion and science, and who speaks on account of those treatises. I began, truth and right are with us. May Almighty God not compel us to seek our rights by force or in any other way. Amen. These 20 years, hundreds of experiences have shown that divine providence has protected us and saved us from ghastly oppression. We should therefore feel quite certain that it will save us from this new, completely illegal and cruel injustice. We nourish powerful hopes from divine mercy that even if we suffer some minor difficulties, troubles, and harms, we shall receive divine mercy and grace and rewards far greater than the troubles, which will be transformed into another form of the sacred service of saving the wretched believers believe. I declare that the incident in question was illegal in 10 ways. The first, for 2 years the Risale-i Nur was in the possession of the judiciary and was scrutinized and investigated by 3 courts and 3 committees of experts, and was passed around 7 government offices in Ankara, and all the treatises of the Risale-i Nur were unanimously and without objection acquitted together with Said and his 75 friends, with not even a single day's penalty being given, so anyone the tiniest bit fair-minded would know just how contrary to the law it is to again seize them as though they were dangerous documents. The second, accusing him of involvement in politics, detectives smashed the lock on the door of a man who, after his acquittal, has lived for 3.5 years as a recluse and stranger in Emirdağ, with his door locked on both the outside and the inside, who has received only 1 person in 100 to perform his necessary tasks, and has even given up composing works which he had previously done for 20 years, but they could find nothing except a poster with some words about belief. Surely anyone with even a grain of intelligence would understand how contrary to the law this torment was. The third, to raid a man's house as though he were a monstrous politician or political conspirator, although as testified to by 70 witnesses in court, he has neither known about the World War, nor asked about it, or been curious about it, and now the same situation has continued for 10 years, and for 20 years has neither read a newspaper, nor listened to one being read, and for 30 years, exclaiming, I seek refuge with God from Satan and politics, has fled from politics with all his might, and despite suffering torturous distress has not applied once to the government for his own comfort, so as not to attract attention to himself or interfere in politics, with which law does it accord to raid his retreat and cause unimaginable distress to his spirit while he lies ill, and one with an atom's conscience would pity him. The fourth, although a number of judicial authorities were prompted against him due to groundless fears concerning the founding of a Sufi order and political society, and due to the personal grudges of a great leader, he was acquitted of the charges after 6 months of investigations by Eskişehir court and of charges connected with the Risale-i Nur. Only on the pretext of a short part of the Risale-i Nur about the veiling of women, the court imposed a sentence of 6 months on 5 or 10 students out of 100, not as dictated by the law, but at its discretion. They had already been under arrest for 4 months by the time the investigation commenced, that is, they had been held in prison for 1.5 months. Then 10 years later, Denizli court scrutinized all the letters and writings of 20 years, and they remained in prison during the investigations conducted by Ankara and Denizli. Then the courts passed down a unanimous decision for their acquittal regarding the Sufi order and political society and the other pretexts, and they acquitted Said and his friends and returned that book and all the letters to their owners. Footnote: the basis and objective of the Risale-i Nur is certain affirmative belief and the truth of the Qur'an. For this reason, 3 courts acquitted it in regard to Sufism. Also, in 20 years, no one at all has claimed that I have given instruction in Sufism. Anyway, a way that this nation has been bound to for 1,000 years cannot be held to be reprehensible. Moreover, those who respond to certain coward dissemblers who label the reality of Islam Sufism and attack this nation's religion cannot be accused of practicing Sufism. As for the society, it is brotherhood that looks to the hereafter insofar as it is Islamic brotherhood. 3 courts have ruled that it is not a political society. So, to now look on them as a political society and accuse him of being a political intriguer and to incite the officers of the law against them as though they were members of a political society and Sufi order is totally opposed to the law, as anyone who has not lost his humanity would know. The 5th, it is like this. Owing to the compassion which is the basis of the Risale-i Nur's way and has been a guiding principle of my life for 30 years, so that no harm should come to any innocent, I do not vex the criminals who persecute me, let alone curse them. I feel anger at the deprived sinners who oppress me with terrible hatred, indeed irreligious tyrants, yet that compassion prevents me from responding physically or even with curses. For those cruel evildoers have wretched elderly parents or innocent children, lest they suffer any blows, I refrain from annoying them for the sake of those innocents, and sometimes I even forgive them. It is owing to this compassion that just as we have done nothing to infringe public order and security, so too I have advised all our friends to such an extent that some fair-minded police in 3 provinces have admitted that the Nur students are moral police and preserve public order and security. This fact has been corroborated by the students' lives over 20 years, by thousands of witnesses, and by no incident at all being recorded by the police despite there being thousands of students. So, which law would permit the house of that person to be raided as though he were a lawless revolutionary, and for unscrupulous men to insult him, and although they were unable to find anything incriminating, to seize his Qur'an and the posters on his wall as though they were dangerous papers, and he was a multiple lawbreaker? The 6th, 30 years ago, that person realized through the grace of God and the efficiency of the Qur'an just how harmful, just how profitless, just how meaningless are fleeting honor and renown in this world, and egotistical self-advertisement and love of fame. From that time he has struggled with all his strength, with his evil-commanding soul, and has striven, as far as he possibly can be, abnegate himself and renounce egotism, and to act without artificiality and hypocrisy. Although his companions and those who serve him know this, and although contrarily to everyone else, for the past 20 years he has fled with all his strength from the excessively good opinions of people and their regards and praise for his person, which everyone wants for themselves, and from looking on himself as a holder of high spiritual rank. And although he has rejected the favorable opinions of his select brothers and offended them, and in his replies to their letters has rebuffed their praises for him and broken their excessively high opinions, and has shown himself to be bereft of virtue, and has ascribed all virtue to the Risale-i Nur, which is a commentary on the Qur'an, and thus indirectly to the collective personality of the Nur students, and that he considers himself to be a common servant. And although this proves decisively that he has not tried to make himself liked, and has not wanted this, and has rejected it, and although without his consent, some of his friends a long way off evinced an excessively favorable opinion of him, and applauded him, and accorded him a high rank, according to which law could he be indicted due to some things a preacher in the region of Kütahya said, and due to a letter bearing my forged signature, although I have never sent a letter to Kütahya, and due to an inflammatory book being found in Balıkesir whose author is unknown. Is there any law in the world, any policy, that would permit the smashing of the lock on the door of a wretched, ill, very elderly recluse who is a stranger as though he had committed some crime, and for detectives to search it, but then could find nothing but a book of invocations and some posters? The seventh, what law would permit such an assault on a person who, at this time when there are so many lively internal and external political currents in this country, and the time is ripe to profit from them, that is, to win to his side many high-ranking politicians instead of his few friends, he wrote and warned his friends not to get carried away on any of the political currents, or enter politics, or disturb public order, solely not to interfere in politics, or harm sincerity, or attract the government's attention to himself, or to busy himself with this world. And although the two main currents caused him trouble and difficulties due to his avoidance of them, the former one out of their groundless fears, the new one because he does not assist it, he does not meddle in the world of the worldly at all, but is busy with his life in the next world, and in 22 years has not written a single letter to his own brother in his home region and the village of Nurs, and in 20 years has not written 10 letters to his friends in those provinces. So, which law would permit such harassment of so wretched a man, and his preoccupation with the hereafter? Although the law allowing freedom of speech and ideas does not intervene in the dissemination of the books of the irreligious and the communist publications, which are most damaging to this country, nation, and morality, would any law, any conscience, any fair-mindedness permit the seizure as though they were dangerous documents of such parts of the Risale-i Nur as Zulfikar and the Staff of Moses, which contain nothing indictable, as has been proved by 3 courts, and for 20 years has been striving to hold together society for this nation and country, and to maintain its morality and security, and to restore the Islamic world's brotherhood and friendship for this nation, which is its true source of support, and to strengthen it effectively, and the value of which was recognized by the scholars of the Directorate of Religious Affairs on their scrutinizing them for 3 months on the orders of the Interior Minister, although their intention had been to find fault with it. What law and conscience would permit their being handed over to the courts? The eighth, this person has not departed for his native region, where he has thousands of relations and friends, although he has been given his complete freedom. After 20 years of distressing exile without cause, he has preferred to remain alone and in exile so that he should have no contact with this world and the life of society and politics. He has achieved the rewards of performing the prayers in congregation in the mosque and preferred to perform them alone in his room. That is, his state of mind causes him to shrink from the people's esteem, and as testified to by his life of 20 years and affirmed by hundreds of thousands of valuable Turkish people, prefers one religious and pious Turk to numerous negligent Kurds, in fact, has proved in court that he would not change his sincere Turkish brothers, whose belief is as powerful as that of Hafız Ali, for hundreds of Kurds, and if not obliged to, does not meet with people or go to the mosque so as not to be acclaimed and be treated with reverence, and for 40 years has striven with all his strength and his works for the brotherhood of Islam and to strengthen love between Muslims, and who does not act negatively towards fierce enemies and does not even busy himself with them or curse them, and who loves the Turkish nation since it is the Qur'an's standard bearer and has been praised by the Qur'an and has passed his life among them. Which law would permit such a person to be insulted in official lists saying, "He is a Kurd, you are Turks, he is a Shafi, you are Hanefis," just for propaganda and to scare his friends and to make the people avoid him, and permit a brimmed hat to be forced on the head of that recluse, although in 22 years and 2 courts he has not been compelled to change his dress, and the peaked cap for soldiers even has been partially modified. The 9th. This is very important and very powerful, but I am remaining silent since it touches on politics. Footnote: the fact that there used to be Christians and Jews in Islamic governments and Muslims in Christian and Zoroastrian governments shows that the government cannot take measures against opponents who do not breach public security. Also, possibilities are not indictable, for anyone can commit murder. If this were the case, everyone would have to be sent to court. The 10th. This was an assault that would be permitted by no law, and in which there were no benefits. It was covered by no law and resulted from making mountains out of a molehill due to unfounded suspicions. So, keeping silent so as not to look to politics as is demanded by our way, we merely say in the face of such treatment that was illegal in 10 respects. God suffices us, and He is the best disposer of affairs. Said Nursi.
My dear, loyal brothers, endless thanks be to Almighty God that this last attack and very extensive and suspicious assault has lessened considerably.
The day before yesterday, they took my statement in court for 4 hours. I replied exactly as I had explained in the statement I sent you before. May God be pleased with the Sparta judiciary, for the notification in our favor that they sent here helped us immensely. We would otherwise have had considerable difficulties due to the baseless suspicions of Afyon and some officials here helping our coward enemies. They sent our Qur'an, which they had confiscated, to the head of the Directorate of Religious Affairs. So we wrote a letter to the head together with the 2 portions of the Qur'an we had sent to Istanbul and some of the portions from the beginning. We said in the letter that we were trying to have it printed photographically and were hoping that he would approve of this and assist us. Among the feudal questions they asked me this time in court was about what I lived on. I told them that I lived on the plenty resulting from living frugally, and that one Ramadan while in Sparta I had lived on 1 loaf of bread, a 1 kilo bag of yogurt, and a kilo of rice. A person who lives thus would not consent to worldly preoccupations for his livelihood, nor be obliged to accept gifts. My dear loyal brothers, firstly, I congratulate you with all my life and spirit on your success and steadfastness, and for the wonder of the ellipse in the 29th word being preserved when written on the waxed paper, and on your never slacking in your work. Secondly, the fact that the fire at the Ministry of Education, which caused 2 million liras worth of damage, occurred at virtually the same time 10 hours later, as the unprecedented anguish I felt on giving my statement for 4 hours showed that the Risale-i Nur is a means of calamities being repulsed, and if it is attacked, the calamities find a way and descend. Thirdly, the piece written about the fire to show an instance of the Risale-i Nur's wonder working, had been waiting for a week to be sent to you. They watched the post offices very closely due to their unfounded suspicions, so we did not send it by post. You are curious as to what your position is vis-a-vis the court. Our brother Burhan writes that he has suffered a small setback. What was it? I was curious. May Almighty God repulse it. I was very pleased to receive the letters of Refat Bey and Abdullah Çavuş. I send them greetings in particular. Greetings to all. Your brother, Said Nursi. Addendum to the petition sent to the President, which I have been obliged to write. The chief reason those malicious people attack and oppress me is their friendship and partiality for Mustafa Kemal. So I say to them, 30 years ago I said about a man who is now dead and gone and whose connections with the government are severed, that according to a hadith, someone would emerge who would cause harm to the Qur'an, and subsequently time showed that man to be Mustafa Kemal. Also, because I did not wrongfully ascribe to M. Kemal the honor and victory of a valiant army which with its heroism and love of truth had for 500 years challenged the world, his malicious friends have been tormenting me for the last 20 years on false pretexts. Yes, as I proved in court, in accordance with a virtuous rule, honor, glory, distinction, and material and moral beauty are given to the army and community, and distributed. Errors and faulty strategies are ascribed to the commander and chiefs. Hence the victories and glory of a heroic army and its soldiers and the valiant officers at their head should not be ascribed to Mustafa Kemal. Rather, the errors and faults should be ascribed to him. So, I consider those who accuse me of not loving him and of not loving the heroic army and of slighting their honor to be traitors to this nation. I have proved this in court, and I am ready to prove it to his obdurate friends. I love the millions of members of this blessed nation's courageous army and its officers, and I do whatever I can to protect their reputation and honor. My malicious enemies who oppose me in effect betray those millions of soldiers out of their love for that one man and are hostile to them even. Yes, numerous signs led me to understand that what incites those who attack me are my objections to Mustafa Kemal and my not being friendly towards him. The other reasons are mere pretexts. I have therefore been obliged to say to those enemies of mine, he summons me to Ankara to act graciously towards me and appoint me as general preacher to all the eastern provinces. So I went there, and the following 3 matters made me turn down his friendship. But for 20 years I have suffered torments in isolation and have not interfered in their world. The first matter was his showing through his actions that he was the man that a hadith had predicted would try to harm Islamic traditions at the end of time. I had expounded the hadith 36 years previously, and the man turned out to be the person it was referring it. There is an explanation of this in the third part of my court defenses. Second matter, it's a correct rule that the existence, construction, and life of something is possible through the existence of all the conditions and elements that pertain to it, but its non-existence, destruction, and death occur on the spoiling of a single condition. That destruction is far easier than construction is a proverb on everyone's lips. In consequence of this certain rule, since the serious mistakes and destruction that are there for all to see resulted from that commander's errors, and the great honors and victories resulted from the army's heroism, it is an awesome injustice to ascribe the good of the community to the man at the top and his evil to the community when it should have been exactly the reverse. Third matter, to ascribe the community's good acts and army's victory to the man at the top and his error to the community means reducing thousands of instances of good to a single good and increasing a single error to thousands. For if a regiment kills a terrible enemy, each of its soldiers receives the rank of Ghazi, a champion war veteran, but if it is ascribed only to the colonel, the honor is reduced 1,000-fold to there being a single Ghazi. And if due to his own error the colonel becomes a bloody murderer, but the murder is ascribed not to him but to the regiment, a single crime multiplies 1,000 times, and 1,000 soldiers become answerable and subject to punishment. Similarly, if the open, serious errors are not ascribed to the deceased man who committed them by attributing them to an army which for 500, indeed 1,000, years has demonstrated its fighting spirit and love of truth to the world, and put its signature with its swords and blood to its being the standard bearer of the noble Qur'an, those errors increase thousands of times over to the number of its officers. It tarnishes terribly the army's shining past and shames this century's army before those armies of the past and makes it culpable. And if the present glories and victories are given to a single man, they diminish thousands of times over, and the fighting spirit and virtues to the number of officers and men are reduced to one and are extinguished. Such faults could never be atoned for. It is for these reasons that I forwent his friendship, and his place I received the friendship of the army, of which, at a crucial time, I was a member and had effectively served, and I strove with the Risale-i Nur to preserve its honor and glory, which was thousands of times more important. Said Nursi in Emirdağ. For 20 years, no police in any province have bothered with my dress. Only 25 years ago, Nevzat Bey, the governor of Ankara, attempted to intervene forcibly, but he was unsuccessful, and he also received a blow by committing suicide. Also, in reply to the orders given by a high-ranking official under the Afyon governor to forcibly intervene in my dress, a low-ranking official in Emirdağ said that they could do nothing contrary to the law and demonstrated his love of legality. Also, because the district official here was not prone to suspicions and did not mistreat me, they tried to have him moved elsewhere. Also, due to my indisposition which makes me unsociable and some other physical illnesses which were preventing me from going to the mosque and the Friday prayers, I acted in accordance with the doctor's law and obtained a weekly report so as not to be sent to give a statement. But in spite of this, I was subject to some arbitrary laws whereby they sent 2 doctors from Afyon to nullify the previous report and even sent the previous doctor to court.